Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Cosmic Catastrophe. I am your host, Diamond, from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, and joining me is my partner and lovely co-host, Leah Shaper.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. We are no longer on Revolution Radio, unfortunately, but we are now exclusively going to be live streaming on Rumble, 8 p.m. Saturday evening. You will get to see the premiere of Cosmic Catastrophe every week at the same time. And then we will replay them over on YouTube on Magnetic Reversal News later in the week. So we are going to be exclusively over at Rumble for Cosmic Catastrophe moving forward. And we thank you all for joining us. We got a great show. Anything you want to say about the new moves?
Well, just that if you want to be the first to see the new premiere of Cosmic Catastrophe, you better go over to Rumble to check it out, because otherwise you might have to wait a week to see it on YouTube.
Exactly. 8 p.m. Mountain Time every Saturday, a new episode of Cosmic Catastrophe. Today's episode is going to be on a recent blog post that I sent Leah over. I forget where I found it. The blog is called Bulwark, and the topic, which is a big one, are you prepared for the geophysical event? Now, what caught my eye, first of all, is the title, and I'm like, oh, this is fear porn. I can't wait to read it. Because first of all, it's just like the internet has been working for about a year. A lot of people, and they even reference one in the article, Open-Minded Approach on X, all talking about some cyclic catastrophe, a geophysical event that's coming. I've seen it on X like 100 times, a post that's like, are you ready for the geophysical event? And so these people, what I glean from that is have no idea what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something is about to happen to Earth and it's huge. That's all they know. It's like, it seems extremely vague and very fear porny.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're constantly trying to get at in this show is understanding the cycles of Earth, right? Because we see in the data that there are all kinds of cycles of changes on Earth, and we're trying to understand what causes those cycles, what drives them, what keeps them at a certain repetition, if there is one. Like, we don't, overall, as the human race, we really do not have a handle on any of that. So the fact that there are people running around the internet randomly claiming that there's some repeated geophysical event that's about to happen again is BS.
Right.
And it's not to say that there are not geophysical events that we are legitimately concerned about, because there are.
Exactly. If you just add one word to this title, you become a legitimate journalist. It should read, are you prepared for the next geophysical event? Because they happen all the time. We can have a VEI 7 eruption that could kill half of the Earth. We could have a huge comet impact, and it might not be the impact that kills people. It could be the mile-high tsunami that hits the coasts. We could have a huge earthquake, magnitude 9 on the West Coast. It would kill 1 million people. These geophysical events we talk about all the time are definitely going to happen in the future. We don't know when. So the question should be, are you prepared for the next geophysical event? Not the geophysical event, because this is what then leads us into conspiracy theory, correct?
Well, right, because it implies that there is some, regular geophysical event that happens over and over again on a cycle. And as far as all of the data that we have looked at, that's not true. Like, are there some regular cycles? Yes, they tend to be climate related, and we're still trying to untangle that. But there's not some, even
those cycles aren't a specific periodicity. They vary. Like grand minimas are between 40 and 200 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So even the 1,000-year bond cycle isn't always 1,000 years. It's about 1,000 years that the Earth gets warmer and we have an empire, and then it drops.
Right.
So we've had the Minoan warm, and about a few thousand years, the medieval warm, the Roman warm, and now we're in the modern warm. And that occurred, all those warms, over 4,000 years. So it's about 1,000 years each peak.
Right, but it's also in that respect, it's not an event, right? It's a largely gradual phenomenon. I mean, if you look at the data on a large enough or small enough resolution, you'll see, a drop off, but in the span of a human lifetime, it's not like this immediate event that suddenly changes everything. It's a process.
Right. And if there is a geophysical event, like a major eruption, we can see an immediate effect, right? Even the largest volcanic eruptions in recent memory, they only cool the earth a degree or two, and
Mhm.
just for a few years.
And they're certainly not on a regular cycle.
No, that's not cyclic. It's all random.
Yeah.
Um, so let's get into this article a little bit. And what I have pulled up here is all of the so-called catastrophes that are being thrown around, conspiracy theory or otherwise, on the internet, including things like Nibiru, cataclysmic pole shift, rapid tilting of the earth. All of these concepts, I've got them up here. We can discuss a little bit about them, but in the end of the show, we're going to bring you right back to reality, because we're going to prove to you that the Arctic has been frozen for 50 million years and the Antarctic has been frozen for 90 million years, which means they have to have been in those positions for tens of millions of years, meaning the Earth doesn't probably tilt. No catastrophes in 50 million years have heated up the Earth in any substantial way to melt the Arctic or the Antarctic. They've pretty much been at the North and South Pole for tens of millions of years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which I will just throw out there really does beg the question on the Piri-Reis map, doesn't it?
No, I've debunked that dozens of times. The Piri-Reis map is showing South America, not Antarctica.
Oh,
It does shows zero Antarctica.
okay.
And
I'm gonna
if
have
you
to
were
look
to
into
go
that one.
onto Google and you say Piri-Reis map, South America, they've got a comparison pictures you can see of South America and the map with lines connecting all of the features on the coast, and
Mhm,
they match 100%. So the Piri-Reis map does not have any of Antarctica on it. It just
Interesting.
has a weird curving South America.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and that has a lot to do with the fact that it's so old. They had a hard time with Cartesian maps.
Oh yeah, I mean cartography is a developed art. It wasn't things were not always so accurate on our maps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are we prepared for the geophysical event? This all comes from an interview with Tucker Carlson that he interviewed Catherine Austin Fitts. She served as an assistant secretary of housing and urban development for the first Bush administration. And the interview covered a wide range of conspiracy theories, from secret forms of energy to attempts by shadowy forces to control world currencies. Now, you watched it. What did you think of it?
Well, let me just say that the tone of this article, um, its purpose seems to largely be to vilify Catherine Austin Fitts. Like, there you can certainly talk about some of the concepts of geophysical events as being conspiracy theories, but there's also legitimacy to some of these things, and some of them are worth considering.
Well,
Um,
and yeah, just like all the crazy stuff Alex Jones once said, 80% of it is true.
right,
Frogs did turn gay, for goodness sakes, from
right,
atrazine.
right.
And in this case, some of the points they try to get her on are true. We are missing trillions of dollars since 9/11 from the federal budget. We don't
Yeah,
know where this money is going.
yeah.
Not only that, well, and a lot of people are saying what they're using it for deep underground military bases. It's a shadow government, it's a shadow operation. What we've learned in the last 5 years, simply from having this channel and researching the news, is that billionaires are building bunkers everywhere,
Well, she also
luxury bunkers, and they're all to escape some doomsday.
she also did a project with another person it was somebody who was well, it doesn't matter. She did a project with another person collecting a lot of data about government underground facilities, not private ones like, the billionaires.
Right.
It turns out many of these are under major cities, including Washington, D.C.
Right. And the consideration here is, if we know about the Billionaire Boys Club, they're connected directly to governments. They're connected directly to politicians, and even the military, the highest levels, the CIA, the FBI. What do they know? What kind of info, what kind of intel did they get that they're spending millions of dollars on these bunkers?
Yeah. Well, also Tucker mentions that he had a friend who was a contractor who was actually working on the underground facility in DC, and gave him some specific information, which is interesting in and of itself, right? Because there's apparently not like some hush hush, you can't talk about it kind of thing. Like, the information is out there that these facilities exist. The question really is what exactly are they for, right? So the thing about, to get back to your original question, the thing about Catherine Austin Fitts, the article from the Bulwark is counting on you not watching the interview. They're counting on you reading the article and getting the tone from the article that she's full of crap, and you shouldn't even, you just be watching crazy people have a conversation. She is very clear when she doesn't know, when she is not an expert on something, or she doesn't know a lot about something, or doesn't know something for sure. She is very clear about that. So, she knows a little bit about solar minimum, but she doesn't know a lot, and she's very clear about that. And so she considers that, that is potentially like a geophysical event that the powers that be may want to be preparing for. But she's like, but I don't know that much about solar minimum. So she doesn't go into in detail. She's very clear about what she does and doesn't know.
I like this
rather than, this article is treating her as if she's just a conspiracy theorist that's spouting nonsense, and you shouldn't listen to her at all.
Yeah, in the article, I like this part. Fitts said that roughly 170 bunkers are being built underground and even under the ocean, because world elites are preparing for a near extinction event, perhaps a shift of the magnetic poles.
Okay, so she mentions that as well, that magnetic excursion or reversal, and she doesn't use those terms because she's clearly not that familiar with it. Yeah. Could be a reason why the elites are doing this. And again, that number, 170 facilities, that comes out of her own detailed research.
Yeah. Now, have you seen the 3-body problem, which they're talking about in this article?
I have not read the 3-body problem, but she generally describes it as the idea of another object entering our solar system and creating chaos. Which, as you and I have discussed in recently, even on the show, that if another body entered our solar system, it would cause chaos. Everything would have to rebalance itself. So,
right. And Immanuel Velikovsky wrote extensively on this topic.
Right. Right.
So it's
interesting too, because the other thing about this article is, like, it seems to want to tell you to even stop thinking about the possibility of some geophysical event that might threaten us. I'm kind of getting that feeling as well.
Yeah, I agree. Let me know if you can hear this. I want to play this clip. This is making its way around the interwebs. I'm trying to use the functionality here. This is former CIA officer John Ramirez claiming that the government is aware of an impending event in 2027, which will reveal something quite significant. That's interesting. Let's play this and tell me if you can hear it.
And I would say I've heard 2027 in a kind of an official capacity I can't reveal. So I think I would say that people in the government are aware of something happening, and that there's limited time, a few more years to prepare the people, and that's what's ramping up this acceleration from the previous 7 decades of not even acknowledging it to now we are acknowledging it at a faster and faster pace.
7 decades they've known about it? That's weird.
I don't really buy the idea that there's a specific year in which something is going to happen. Like, to me, it seems like there's a lot of possibilities of things that may happen in the relatively near future, but I don't get the impression that, not us, and I don't think anyone else can really like pinpoint that to a date right now. Like even the magnetic excursion that we're clearly in or we've entered recently. I mean, it's clearly, to me, it seems clear that it's going to happen, but I don't think that our math is good enough yet to say exactly when, or that we can account for all of the variables that will determine at what speed that happens.
No, Earth's top geophysicists have gone on record recently in the last 6 months talking about the current magnetic excursion. And they said, and what they all concur with is there's no way to predict more than a few months out what the field is doing. We have no idea. It's so variable. And there is no understanding in what is controlling this magnetic field. So that means we don't know anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
there's no way that in 2027, they know it's the magnetic field and we all got to go underground. They would only know the date if 70 years ago they had planned an event to change the world, which means it's a false flag. It's a planned event. They didn't have the technology to pull it off. It took 7 decades to get the technology ready, and they're going to implement it to make us one global hegemony or to make us all slaves, or who knows?
Right. No, I agree with you. Yeah, the only way it's a specific date is if it's something that's planned. And then, as far as the magnetic excursion is concerned, if we understood the excursion in such a way, the electromagnetics in such a way that we could predict when we would hit the bottom of that, then I think you could probably surmise that we would have some much more advanced technologies than we do now. And I'm not saying it's impossible that the elites have, technologies and knowledge that none of the rest of us have. That's certainly possible. But as far as understanding electromagnetics, I think that probably could be applied in so many different areas that we would probably, as a populace, have technologies that we just don't have today if we understood all of that.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk has even said recently, being who he is at SpaceX, he is literally allowed into all of the top secret facilities all over the country with all these top secret engineers and all this stuff going on. And he hasn't seen anything that's, 0-point energy or fusion reactors or anything like that. So everyone's trying, but he hasn't seen any evidence of that, which would mean that it would be some total shadow government, some secret group that has this technology, and that's the only way it could exist.
Which is still possible.
Highly. I say it's probably 90% possible that's going on.
Right.
It's definitely 51%.
Well, I mean, you could maybe argue too that if you understood all of the dynamics of a magnetic excursion or reversal, that you might also then be able to stop it if you understood it that well.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But the forces are so great, we don't have the technology to do that.
Well, right. And this is always the issue. I think
we don't have enough power. Remember, we discussed this?
Yes.
If we took all the power on Earth, we couldn't even move a hurricane.
Right. That was exactly where I was going, right?
Yeah.
There are so many conspiracy theories around, we're actually capable of doing this and that, but they neglect exactly that, the calculation of exactly how much energy would be required to do that, which essentially doesn't even exist on this planet.
Yeah. So the question is, billionaires are building luxury bunkers and the government is doing the same. What is it for? Is it Nibiru? Well, the Nibiru cataclysm was made up by Nancy Leiter, the founder of the website Zeta Talk. This woman claims she is a contactee, meaning she talks to aliens from Zeta Reticuli, and that she was chosen to warn mankind that the object would sweep through the solar system May 2003. So that is the Nibiru story. Did anything happen in 2003? No. Did she talk to aliens from Zeta Reticuli? Give me a break. This is the biggest joke idea And then people are still on the internets and the interwebs claiming Nibiru is coming back. You see all the pictures of the lens flares. There's whole groups sharing lens flare photos of two suns as if Nibiru is right next to our sun. I assure you, if there was another object as large as the sun next to the sun, we would not be here.
Yeah.
There would be no life on Earth, folks. So that certainly is not happening. What about the cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis?
Are we talking about
evidence of? Go ahead. Were you saying something?
Are we talking about physical poles or magnetic poles here?
Oh, I'm going to read the Wikipedia here.
Okay.
We have evidence of precession of the equinoxes and even axial tilt of the planet. But those changes are on long time scales and do not involve relative motion of the spin axis with respect to the planet. We also know something called true polar wander, and it might explain why the Hawaiian Islands chains are moving in a southeasterly direction. There are a few peer-reviewed papers on that. We've also changed the tilt of the Earth, and I'll bring up this paper, 13.5 inches in just the last few decades from overusing groundwater.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the Earth is tilted 13.5 inches south.
I mean, in respect to the whole size of the Earth, it's like absolutely minuscule amount. And I'm amazed that we've been able to calculate that.
Oh, it's a little bigger than that. Let me bring this up. Oh. It's 31.5 inches in less than 2 decades. That's pretty significant. I
mean, at the same time, it's not relative to the size of the Earth, but
right. So, and I'm sure that the tilt of the Earth probably varies, right? It moves a little back one day and a little bit forward one day.
That has got to be extremely hard to calculate as well, again, because relative to the size of the Earth, that's a minuscule change. And I'm we
could be very specific because within 20 years, we have satellites that are in stationary Lagrange points that have been staring at single points on the Earth. So they can tell it moved exactly.
I mean, still though, I mean, if you consider what the margin of error would be for that, it's like, it's a little... I think having the satellites obviously makes it much more possible, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me that there would be some variability in the tilt.
Here's the paper that came out explaining it. Polar drift in the 1990s explained by terrestrial water storage changes. So this paper they used to explain that tilt in the last 20 years.
I'm a little skeptical of the mechanism as well.
Right, and the whole paper
know for sure that it is about our water usage.
The whole paper is for climate change bullshit. They're using it to scare you. We're running out of water. The Earth is tilting. It's climate change.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The reason we're running out of water is nothing to do with the climate. It has to do with overuse. The climate doesn't do anything to water. The water on Earth is a closed system. It's all already here. All of the water is here. Some is ice, some is rain. Most is in the ocean. The climate does not get rid of water. That is absolutely third grade math.
Right.
People get rid of water. They in California, they dump all the fresh water into the ocean. They don't save any of it to save the smell.
But it's still on planet Earth. It's not like it's still on planet Earth, though. It's not disappearing.
Right, but you can't drink it. They put it in the ocean.
Right.
You can't water anything with it. So mismanagement, not climate change, is why we are in these water woes. The Colorado River never had Lake Mead. It never had Lake Powell. And by doing that, they've destroyed the ecosystem. They've destroyed the hydrology of the region. They submerged Glen Canyon, which is one of the most beautiful places in North America, is now underwater. Not to mention the tens of thousands of archaeological sites, petroglyphs and pictographs that are now ruined.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. What was it, Abiquiu Lake that we were talking about this?
Yeah.
That where they filled in this lake, and the result is that you're burying archaeological evidence of past settlements. And
all of it. So all of that, the settlements were on the river, which is now 190 feet underwater.
And the weird thing is when you go kayaking on that lake, like there's a very eerie feeling there. I don't like it.
Yeah, it is creepy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so true polar wander. What were we getting to? The whole cataclysmic pole shift. All right, so cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis is the pseudo-scientific claim that there have been recent geologically rapid shifts in the axis of rotation of Earth. And this would include anything you read about in the Bible, the Earth stopping rotating, reverse rotating.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is evidence for this written down in myth and legend.
Mm-hmm.
There's no physical evidence for it, however.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right.
Also, it doesn't have to be a function of cataclysmic pole shift, right? Like you could argue, say we had another body entering the solar system, which causes chaos in the orbits of, bodies within the solar system. Then you could create a situation where it may appear as if the Earth is rotating in the opposite direction, but it's really just a matter of perspective. The same way that when we look at planets and they go into retrograde motion, they appear to us as if they're moving backwards, but it's just a matter of our actual perspective.
Right. And if Immanuel Velikovsky is correct, and something happened in the inner solar system just a few thousand years ago, the same time that all the claims of the Earth stood still, the sun stood still, or it rose over there instead of over here, they're all around that time. If an object were to come into the inner solar system and perturb other planets and they start moving, just like you said, you get retrograde things happening. The Earth could, in fact, start sliding out of its orbit. And because the Earth is sliding out of the orbit, it's not the rotation that's shifting, but it would look like the sun is moving backwards instead of forwards.
Exactly.
And it could be just for a brief moment, a day, a half a day.
Right.
But it would appear as if, if the Earth stops rotating, we all die instantly.
Yes.
It's moving. We're spinning at the equator over 1,000 miles an hour. So if it stopped, you would hit the wall at 1,000 miles an hour and liquefy.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Everything would be flattened. All the forest would break. The force would be enormous, first of all. And there's really no force that can do that we know of.
Yeah.
But the explanation of an object coming into the inner solar system and simply perturbing the Earth a little, it may slide out of its orbit, which makes the sun look like it goes backwards, but it comes back the next day. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it's fine because we're here.
Right.
If something like that happened and it pushed us out of the Goldilocks zone, we would no longer be fine.
Right.
And it could be events like this that explain why Earth was much warmer 200, 300 million years ago. We could have been much closer to the sun.
Yes.
Due to these events. And now we're in ice age again because an event pushed us further from the sun.
Perhaps.
That's like Occam's razor. It's the simplest explanation on why it gets colder and warmer in geologic time relative to the Earth.
Right.
Either our magnetosphere is bigger or thicker and it's warmer, or we're closer to the sun. There's very few things that could do that.
Right. And I think there's a number of variables that have to be considered for that, right? Like we've been talking in recent shows about expanding Earth hypothesis, right?
Yes.
And, one of the functions of that would actually, like if the Earth were actually smaller at one time in the past, then that means our atmosphere would have been a lot denser as well.
And gravity would be half.
Right. And so if our atmosphere is now much denser, that's obviously going to create different climatic conditions. And perhaps that means being quite a bit warmer.
Yeah, so if we were alive in the Jurassic, I would weigh about 65 pounds. That's really weird. I guess humans would be tiny. I don't think they'd get big. Or maybe they would get big.
There's probably a reason why. I mean, you know, again, we've discussed that this concept is important for explaining how dinosaurs could even exist on Earth, right? And in the opposite direction, it also helps explain why hominids did not exist at this time, because even things like our bone density weighing, you know, if we weighed half as much, would be seriously affected. Like our all of our health would be tremendously affected by half gravity. I mean, we see this even when we have astronauts on the International Space Station for extended periods of time in very low gravity. They obviously suffer very serious health effects from that. So, you know, it would not be ideal for us. It would have apparently would have been more ideal for dinosaurs.
It would be awesome for track and field. I high jumped 6'9". I high jumped the highest any white boy did ever in my high school. And I'm 5'9", and I high jumped 6'9", which means during the Jurassic, I could high jump 13 and a half feet.
Right.
That is crazy. The long jump be like 50 feet.
I don't know if the math is quite that linear, but yeah, I mean, it'd be something like that.
Right. All right. So back to cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis. This also includes the rapid tilting of the pole. Now, the problem with that, and I will quickly bring this up here. I'll share all these articles will be shared below. Antarctica was once a rainforest. Unfortunately, that was 90 million years ago, according to the fossil assemblages. So we have hard geologic evidence that the earliest tropical fossils in Antarctica date 90 million. Everything else shows, you know, Arctic steppe. And the reason is, if we go back 90 million years, the Atlantic is half as wide. We've got a lot going on. So continents have shift, but we've been pretty much the way we've been sitting for the last 90 million years, according to Antarctica, which hasn't been warm for 90 million years. Now, the temperature has gone up and down. There are phases where it's warmer, but it's always Antarctica, which is usually minus 50 degrees average. It gets down to like a minus 90. There's nothing warm about Antarctica, yet there's articles about Antarctica's melting and burning up. It's like there's like 3 days that may get above freezing there.
Right.
For an hour.
Right.
And portions of Antarctica are much further south than the rest of the continent. So they use that little peninsula to fearmonger about.
Oh, well, yeah. And it's very convenient too, right? Because a lot of the research stations are up on that sort of northern end. Yeah.
So the Arctic was also tropical, but it's a little bit more recent. The Arctic was tropical 55 million years ago based on fossils from the Arctic. Now, the fossils they talk about in the 1920s, or the tropical plants they discuss in the 1920s found up in the Arctic when they found the mammoths, they're unrelated. The mammoths date 20 to 50,000 years ago, the ones they find in the mucks, which is permafrost. But the fossils they found were from a rock outcrop that dates over 230 million years ago. So when they were first described as tropical plants in 1920, there really wasn't much geology going on, certainly not a lot of paleontology. And the scientists that went up there, they knew what they were looking at, a tropical plant, but they just didn't know how to date it. They didn't understand the stratigraphy, the time frame, or any of that. And that misinformation is still being regurgitated and repeated today.
Well, and I think maybe this is one of the missing pieces too, is just the fact that geology really is as young a field as it is. You know, we didn't really know that much up until, I don't know, you can probably say better, like what decade? But like you said, in the 20s, like there was no stratigraphy being done on these plants. So
I'm sure there was one guy that started in the 1880s doing some stratigraphy, but just at one location. I'm not like, we had no global perspective of thing. The first geologic maps came out in the turn of the century and a little before, but they were highly incomplete maps. When I went to field camp, I was actually finishing one of those maps from 1890 because it had never been completed. There's so much incomplete geologic work on mapping on the surface. But
Yeah.
today, almost the entire surface of Earth has been geologically mapped.
Mhm.
So
Well,
that's
and it's important to note too that we have mapped a good bit of the ocean floor as well.
yeah, but we've mapped more of the moon than the seafloor.
Right.
So
At least
we
we
don't
have the
even
seafloor
know.
dated.
Say again?
At least we have the seafloor dated.
Yeah. All right. So if you have any doubt or questions, if the Arctic or Antarctica have been in stable positions for 50 million years, leave a question below. I'll be happy to answer it.
Well, one other thing I want to mention here too, this idea of, geophysical pole shift. I have a very hard time conceptualizing how you would ever take like a rotational axis and somehow like put it somewhere else on Earth. Like the physical mechanism that would cause that is like, I can't even think of how that would work. It doesn't make any sense to me.
There is a phenomenon. It's escaping me the title of the phenomenon. But if you take a gyroscope in space in zero gravity and you spin it, you pull the cord, the gyro, and you let it go, the gyro will maintain its position and flip back and forth, just like that. It's called
but that's not actually
the
changing the rotational.
Dombrowski effect, or I don't know what it's called. It's two words.
I mean, that's not actually changing the rotational axis in respect to the object itself.
It's just alternating north and south.
Right.
It keeps the axis and it flips.
Right.
But that's only in 0G.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is we've got a magnetosphere, and the magnetosphere adheres everything to the surface of the Earth so that it doesn't feel like we're moving at 1,000 miles an hour. We're not. We're stationary relative to the planet. It's only really when you look outside of Earth you can see it spinning, right? If you're standing on it, you're just standing on it. It eliminates the centripetal and centrifuge. All those forces go away because of things we can't explain, like gravity, which is not.
But, I mean, it's also a concept of relativity, right? Like when you're sitting on a moving train, you don't feel like you're moving, really. Typically, as if the motion of the train is pretty consistent, you don't feel like you're moving. It's the same concept.
Right. And they make big gyros out of tires with handles on it that they use in physics labs. If you spin it and you're holding it and you try to twist your arms, the chair that you're sitting on moves. And so if our planet rotating on its nice little axis started to tilt, it would be pushed off of its current position. It wouldn't just stay stationary. There would be force and it would start to move in other ways. It wouldn't just be a perfect tilt. It would go all haywire.
Yeah.
And not only that, everything would die. Everything on the surface would be destroyed. And all of the oceans would wash over all the continents. Nothing would survive. There would be huge salt lagoons all over the continents, which there are not. There would be huge salt deposits, which there are not. And there would be regularly layered every 12,000 years or whatever they claim in the geologic data, in the stratigraphy. We would see it.
Yes.
There's no evidence for this.
Right.
Yet people claiming this happens, I guess they don't want to bring it up. They purposefully know and they don't mention it.
Well, I mean, okay, let's say you're talking about magnetic excursions and reversals, right? That there's a claim by a friend of ours that these happen, every 12,000 years. The data does not show that. The data shows very clearly that this happens at seemingly random times, and that's pretty easy to track. But if you want to make a name for yourself, and you can cherry pick your data and claim that that's the case, and then people get excited about it because it sounds cool and it's interesting and whatever, and people don't go and check the data.
Right.
To see that that's incorrect.
Another thing that that person parrots is the false claim that these frozen mammoths have tropical plants in their mouth and their stomach. And we've done shows on this. The peer-reviewed literature shows that the plants in all of the animals being found in the mucks are plants that are still growing in the Arctic. So if you tell a lie again and again and again, eventually your audience will just believe it and follow you into the abyss.
Right. Unfortunately, I guess reality isn't really that exciting or as exciting. Which is interesting, right? Like why is the idea that this is a cyclical change so much more appealing than it not being cyclical, that it's rather random? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I guess it's just human nature to feel like you've understood something simply because you believe there's a pattern. And there are patterns in the universe, but
Right.
this
The
doesn't
biggest
happen to
one
be
is
one
the
of them.
precession of the equinoxes that the ancients knew about.
Right. Right. Which
Yep.
is absolutely fascinating, right? Like, especially if you link that to the Yuga cycle,
Right.
and then you link that to changes in civilization. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
And then with the work of Randall Carlson, you can literally put geophysical events on the Yuga.
Yeah.
They happen at the top and the bottom and the sides, and they form that iron cross.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always happen.
Right.
But when they do happen, they happen with regularity on this 6,500 year plan, where the sides of the iron cross, well, they vary what they are, but they're all related to climate.
Yeah.
It gets hot, it gets cold. And when you look at the geologic record, it shows as high stand and low stand ocean. And you even see these cycles when there's no ice. So I can't even explain what's happening there. But as long as you got some ice on Earth, you can get sea level coming up and down on a regular pattern. If it's a 26,000 year warm and cold cycle, you're going to get sea level up and down. So if you sit on the same spot where sediment's happening, you'll be able to visualize the depth change. So this is happening on a regular pattern every 26,000 years. That's what the rock cycle average is. When you look at these cycles, that's the cycle. So it has to be related to the precession of the equinoxes. But what if it's just the wobbling of the axis? Milankovitch does not change the temperature all that much to have these catastrophic tipping points. I mean, just like you mentioned earlier with earlier stuff, it is a gradual 26,000 year movement. It's not like boom, 26,000 and it goes. It's slowly going. So you would the change would be negligible year by year.
Right.
So we're missing so much in understanding everything about Earth. We don't know nothing.
No, we pretty much don't know anything.
But I got some cool stuff to share here. We've got one more. The theory of crustal displacement. And again, they call this pseudoscience. Everything that's not out of the textbook is pseudoscience. Just to get that clear. And most things that are not in the textbook are probably the answer and will eventually be in the textbook.
Not all of them. There's plenty of things discussed on a regular basis, not in the textbook, that to me seem like complete, total BS. Like Nibiru, for example.
Well, I just told you some woman claims she spoke to aliens.
Right.
So the theory of crustal displacement is one that is quite interesting. It is the idea that somehow the crust and the ocean plates, so the crust being continental plate and ocean plates, are sitting on the mantle and they are attached to it magnetically. And that something can decouple the crust from the mantle, because right at the crust mantle transition, they call it the plastic zone. It's where rocks act like plastic. The asthenosphere is another term for this. That somehow that can uncouple and then the whole crust can slide on the Earth.
I mean, as you've pointed out before, one of the problems with this is that the Earth is not a perfect sphere.
So it's like the eggshell would stop it from
right. It's like trying to slide an eggshell all the way around the egg, which wouldn't work because
you would get massive cracks and earthquakes, and the whole crust would break up if that happened.
Well, actually, to be fair, in the case of the egg, it could work simply because the interior of the egg is liquid.
Yeah. So maybe that's not the best reason against this is that Antarctica has been down there for 90 million years, and Arctic has been up there for 55 million.
Mhm.
Yeah. And in order for this to be true, if it ever does happen, it could slip, but it would have to go exactly back to where it was when it started.
Mhm.
And then none of that makes any sense.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
What?
So let me read it. By studying the carcasses of woolly mammoths and rhino found in the northern regions of Siberia and Canada, one can see that the land these animals grazed on was suddenly shoved into a much colder climate. Their stomachs reveal food found in warm climates. This is a lie. This is coming from Hapgood. That's in the 1950s, and that is the lie just being repeated here on a blog post. There is not a single peer-reviewed paper that shows that these frozen animals have any plants in their contents of their stomachs that aren't in the Arctic currently.
Well, I mean, and maybe you could interpret the way this is written. Well, no. I mean, you could say, if you're talking about plants from warm climates, you could argue that these are just the summer plants that they're finding in the stomachs of these animals, which is what we're saying, because that is actually what you find is the grasses that are found in the summer and the fall is what in the Arctic is what you find in the stomachs of those animals. So it is a warmer climate, just it's a seasonally warmer climate, not a geographically warm climate.
Right. And during the last glacial maximum and earlier, this is at the peak of the ice age, sea levels are 400 feet lower. And the entire region where Siberia and Alaska are now one huge landmass that's nothing but Arctic steppe, grasslands, an ice-free continent where all these animals are grazing. This is at the peak of the ice age. So you have to understand that.
Yeah.
So there is no point in the last 50,000 years where all the flash frozen animals have been discovered in that time frame. None of them were in any warm climate. Okay. Here we go. We did have a dangerous axis tilt of Earth 84 million years ago, according to research. 12
degrees.
Yeah, 12 degrees, 84 million years ago. It would have displaced continents by thousands of miles, enough to push New York City to where Tampa, Florida is now. The paper is True Polar Wander. Some scientists argue that the outer mantle and crust can wobble and slide over the Earth's liquid metal core. In other words, the crust and mantle rotated around the Earth's outer core, also shifting the geographical poles and causing the planet to tilt itself and slipped back. Pretty
This article doesn't explain what their evidence for this is at all.
So here, let me share this is a diagram of True Polar Wander. And you can see how the Earth's rotation slips here. Can you see it? Am I sharing it?
Yeah, I can see it.
True polar wander is when a solid body rotation or reorientation of a planet or moon with respect to its axis causes the geographic locations of north and south to change or wander in rotational equilibrium. Because the planets are not rigid, they form a rotational bulge, which affects the inertial tensor of the body. So this is kind of like how I was describing the gyro. If you were to move it, the Earth would wobble.
Right.
And then until it recovered.
Right.
I don't know if I buy any of that. There's no time frame given. I looked at the papers. If you look at Hawaii and you look at the seafloor map, you can see the islands have moved diagonally to the southwest. The plate is either moving over a hot spot or the hot spot is moving. And they say that is evidence of the true polar wander. It could be evidence of expanding Earth. It could be evidence of 100 things.
I mean, it's weird because you could easily fit that into plate tectonics theory if you wanted
Right.
to.
Yeah.
Like, to be easily explained in that respect.
Well, the plate movement is this way.
Yeah.
And the Hawaiian Islands are moving diagonal to the movement of the plate.
Okay.
So that's the problem.
Well, okay,
Well,
but
so the easterly motion is the plate motion, but the southerly motion is not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a similar problem to, why is the Pacific Ocean continuing to expand if supposedly all of the expansion that occurs at rifts, supposedly equals the amount of subduction that happens in subduction zones, but yet the Pacific Ocean continues to expand. So,
yeah, and
there's
the
something
Atlantic
missing here in the plate tectonics, and
the Atlantic is expanding at the same time.
Right. Right.
So the Earth is expanding.
Right.
Problem.
I mean, there's obviously a mechanism in here that would explain the Hawaiian Islands, but it doesn't fit into the current narrative. So therefore somebody came up with this to explain the movement of Hawaii. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
No,
No.
it comes up in a paper I remember reading years ago.
I mean, yeah, I'd be really curious to look at the papers that claim that we had a major axial shift 84 million years ago. I'm really curious to see what kind of evidence is cited to support that idea, because I'm not buying it right now.
Right. We pretty much debunked all of the geophysical events, the pseudoscientific conspiracy theories on Earth tilting. And I've got a package delivery guy here, so there's.
Oh, I was wondering why the dogs were barking.
You can talk for a while.
I don't have anything to show, but again, yeah, I can talk for a bit. I mean, I was just, again, going to go back to this issue of this image here of the rotational axis of Earth. In this image, it's still in a north-south direction, but the whole of Earth has shifted over to one side. And so therefore the axis of rotation becomes different. Like, I can't even see how that would happen. Even in the example of the gyroscope that's flipping upside down in 0G, the axis of rotation relative to the object itself doesn't change. In this example, it does change, and I can't for the life of me imagine how that would ever work. Like,
it wouldn't.
It would require even like massive deformation, like inside the Earth, for that to even happen.
Right. So and all of these ideas we just talked about, all of them, the crustal displacement, the axe tilt, the stopping of the rotation, anything that we've discussed, there's no way that some type of shadow government would know that in 2027 it's going to happen.
No, most definitely not.
Right.
There's no pinpointing of that. Like, we're so far from. I don't even think it could work at all. So it's like not even a question in my mind. But unless it's something planned, I don't think that the elites, or whatever you want to call them, I don't think they're as capable and as powerful as people think. And I'm not saying that they're not powerful, but we're so limited in our understanding of how just our own planet works, not to mention the rest of the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe. I just, again, it's like going back to this issue of arguments that HARP allows us to direct and move hurricanes, when in reality, the amount of energy that will be required to do that basically exceeds what we even have available to us. It's just absurd. Your mic is off.
All right. So I think he's leaving. Exactly. Okay. So if an event is happening in 2027, it's a planned event. They came up with the plan according to that government official 7 decades ago. They now have the technology to implement it. It's not going to be them nuking a volcano and making it go off, because we don't have evidence that that would even work. So it's none of these cockamamie ideas where they're going to make a volcano erupt or create an earthquake, because we just don't have that technology. The possibility of Cascadia slipping is very high and may happen in 2 years.
Sure.
But the government won't be responsible.
Well, that brings up another good point here, is that you don't need to like create a geophysical event, because there will be one at some point.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we're not going to
So-
stop the natural processes of the earth. So,
Right. And with our waning magnetosphere, the biggest threat is the sun. And for those that don't know, take a look at this. We just had a long duration M flare. The black dot is Earth. It was directly Earth facing, and it is coming. It's supposed to be moving very fast, over 1,000 kilometers per second.
M8.2. Oh,
Yeah.
dear. And we're
And
right in the
so
middle of it too.
The latest update, which occurred 2 hours ago, shows extreme up to severe G4 geomagnetic storm
Yeah.
on the 2nd, G3 on June 1st. Here you can see that halo eruption. And we are currently in radiation storm. So we are almost in S2. Let's look at the electrons. So here's goes electron flux. We're in S1 radiation storm currently. And let's look at the protons. We just went up into a proton storm just about a few hours ago. And that is due to that massive long duration. Look at that. It lasted for 4 hours in the M range.
Wow. Well, and you and I have been talking about that. It's very clear to us that the effects of solar outbursts they're affecting us much more than they have in the past, which is surely due to our weakened magnetosphere. So your mic is off again.
Astrophysicists and plasma physicists aren't picking up what's happening.
I've noticed that. So I was about to say maybe not I don't know if this is Solar Ham's personal prediction as far as the level of geomagnetic storm, but
No,
I
that's
was
coming
say
from NOAA. He just shares the NOAA data.
Right. So this might in reality be more like a level 9 and 10 rather than 7 and 8.
Yeah, because it's so directly Earth facing, so thick and so fast that it is going to slam. The faster it is, the harder and the more compression on the magnetosphere.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big one, even though it's not even an X flare, because huge amounts of plasma, take a look, came out for 4 straight hours. That's all the yellow before it dropped out of M range. That is a massive continuous.
Yeah.
It's going to be big. But what's interesting is even people like Tamitha Skov or Tony Phillips, these are solar scientists. They're saying that there's very high probability that there will be aurora at low latitudes. No one was predicting that ever before. Even during big X flares 20 years ago, no one suggested you're going to see aurora in Texas. Yet now, even low-level storms, people in Arizona see aurora all the time now.
Yeah. Well,
we just had our first aurora sighting at high elevation here.
Yeah.
So maybe we're going to see aurora again.
Yeah, because even the Mother's Day solar storms last year, we had aurora reaching basically the equator, which was pretty fascinating. And
we may see that again.
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't. In fact, I would argue that it would be more likely.
Right.
Simply because as time marches on, the magnetosphere gets weaker.
The sun is really the biggest threat to humanity, because even if we had a VEI-8 eruption, it wouldn't destroy technology. It would kill off a huge amount of the population through starvation, disease, and stuff like that. But it wouldn't destroy where we are at technologically, nor would an impact or a major tsunami or an earthquake. But a solar flare can end it all. That's it. That's the only thing. A solar flare or some cosmic ray event from out in the universe is headed towards us, and that would also end all of our technological advances to this point.
I keep thinking again, because we're talking about, natural geophysical events. We're also talking about, potentially man-made or man-instigated geophysical events. And I keep thinking about, people like Bill Gates proposing that we spray particulates into the stratosphere to cool the earth and combat global warming. And I've always said that I really think that for someone like Bill Gates, I think these people absolutely know that global warming is nonsense. And that the point of this is to, cool the earth when it will be cooling naturally anyway, because it's part of a cycle, and then to be able to claim credit for cooling the earth. But then I wonder, well, what do you do with the catastrophes that come with that? And granted, you would have to, I'm not even sure how you would do this. I don't remember the name of this private company that we discovered recently has been spraying sulfates into the atmosphere to try to cool the earth. And it's kind of
something sunsets. Keep sunsets.
Making sunsets. I think that's what it's called. Making sunsets.
Okay.
And it's laughable because the amount of material that you're actually going to be able to deposit. I don't even think that they're getting this stuff into the stratosphere in the first place. But the amount of material is so tiny by comparison, it will have no effect. I mean, as we have mentioned on this show and many other times, even the amount of particulates from a volcano only cools the earth for, a year at best, right? Or a couple of years. And there's no permanent effect. So,
if it were VEI 9, it could be decades, or it could change the climate forever.
Right. But point being, you need an enormous quantity of material to even make that happen. So then then I'm going, well, and then once you do that, once you have a VEI 9, right, as we've discussed, you would end up with starvation, right? Because blocking the sun using particulates is going to create major difficulties with growing food. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Bill Gates is very interested in depopulation. I think that he's made that abundantly clear with his own words over several decades. But it's like, what is he thinking? Like he must know that this is a geophysical event that can happen on its own in the first place, that the climate will cool on its own thanks to differences in the sun's activity. So, what is even his purpose? Is he just does he just want to see destruction and suffering? Because that's really the only explanation I can come up with when I consider all of that. Well, I guess then he gets to claim credit for, the last decade of his life or something like that. But
yeah, he's an egomaniacal billionaire. I don't think he cares about anything but himself.
Right. I guess that's the
clearly
best
doesn't. He got his wife left him because he's a psychopathic egotist.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Epstein Island. He can do whatever he wants. If you have billions of dollars, you could do the dirtiest, most disgusting crap behind the scenes, pay everyone off, and no one knows but your wife. And then she finally leaves you because she's sick of it.
Right. Yeah. I guess if you're that person, living your life with the sole motivation being feeding your own ego, I guess that would explain it. And, you have enough money and then you can do major things like this and see what I did? Aren't I wonderful? I saved us from climate change.
Right. So just to wrap up here, most of the conspiracy theories about Earth, before you jump to any conclusions, you should probably check with a geologist. Most of these people don't. And all of these people have me blocked in perpetuity. Any one of these people, when I try to point out the evidence against their theories, they block me forever on all platforms. Mm-hmm. Even on X, I just checked a bunch of guys that are out there. I'm blocked by everyone that I disagree with. This is not how you do science, first of all.
Right.
You need to have open debate and discussion or it will never move forward.
Yes.
So these people that are spewing these conspiracy theories they don't care about the truth. They care about their psychopathic, egomaniacal self.
It's astounding, isn't it, how much destruction and in the world that causes egoist motivations and how much evil that creates. That is the source of everything evil, it seems.
Yeah. But there is one who has all power. That one is the sun. May you find him now, because the sun is going to come and ruin the Earth's, is going to ruin the Earth one day.
Well, yes, maybe, and that's probably what happened to Mars, right? Maybe,
Yeah.
or some other, interbody plasma event.
Yeah, the huge scar, Vias Marinaris,
Mhm.
that is a plasma scar. So if I think Venus flew very close to Mars, they connected through a super lightning bolt, and that would just fry off the atmosphere. They had to be connected for quite some time to form that giant electrical scoured canyon.
Yeah.
Wow, imagine if they did a dance like Venus came towards Mars, they connected statically with that super bolt, and then they just spun around, connected for a while until Venus whipped away.
Right.
And then what the visual on Earth would be.
Or like even what, having that electromagnetic interaction nearby in our solar system, what did that do to us, right? Did it throw Earth into chaos temporarily as well? Because
right, there's a Mayan god that's the god of Mars. He has a scar on his face. And there's no way the Mayans could have seen the Vias Marinaris on Mars. So that is another question.
Yeah.
Mars would have had to been right there, as big as the moon to notice that.
Right. Right.
So how did a Mayan god of Mars know? Like, we don't know anything, folks.
Well, apparently we knew something at what time. Otherwise, these stories that seem to indicate some piece of truth wouldn't exist in our folklore and mythology.
Right. So the powers that be have been keeping us in the dark for millennia. They burn the books, they fake the news, they distort the information, they compartmentalize everything now so that they can keep the information for themselves.
Well, it's interesting too, because, it seems like, the point of keeping the information to yourself would be in order to be able to use it to manipulate the population.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering how I'm thinking that currently that the elites perhaps don't actually understand enough to really pull that off.
Thank God.
I mean, but that leads me to, you would then try to control the population by other means, right? But through, like Catherine Austin Fitts, for example, I mean, she's quite convinced that the means by which you control people is, what does she call it? The control centers or whatever. So it would be the reason for AI. It would be the reason for controlling people's bank accounts, for surveilling their lives, all of this, the kind of stuff that you see occur, let's say under the CCP, right? Where you're really able to control people through very basic means that affect their daily lives. That would be the only way you would be able to really gain control if you don't really understand what's going on in our solar system.
Yeah, well, I suggest everyone get a couple acres, a few chickens, and a pig, and you'll all be all right. Learn to grow your own food, or join a community that does that. Any final words?
If you do that, you can survive and thrive, even under the worst of circumstances.
Right. And if you want to test to see if you're ready, just go over to your circuit breaker, turn off the circuit, and don't turn it on for a week. See how that works out. So this is going to be up on Rumble tonight, and we will replay it later in the week over on YouTube. And the reason for that is YouTube sucks.
Yep. So come find us on Rumble, and you will be the first to see the premiere of this episode.
Yep. Every week, Saturday, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And that is a boom.